Some speculation that German Chancellor Angela Merkel has reached out to Ivanka as a diplomatic back channel to Donald Trump. What do you make of that? And do you take any issue with that? I mean, we do have an entire diplomatic corps in the United States. What should Americans be thinking about that, if that's true?
Well, it is unfortunate right now that we don't have a lot of diplomats in place or in important posts around the world because these appointments have not been made. And so this is part of the challenge, is somebody has to be representing the United States. And the Trump administration had decided for this instance, as a test perhaps, to send Ivanka Trump. She is the president's daughter, by all accounts, has his ear and able to influence him. And for Angela Merkel, a very smart move on her part if she is looking to have influence in an administration that unfortunately has had a frosty reception to her directly. Now, the challenge that you have here is Ivanka in these situations. Foreign audiences aren't quite sure what to make of her. She's not the first lady. She has a position that's been relatively undefined, and there's zero incentive for a foreign audience to talk about her or address her in a way that frankly commands respect, because she's not a head of state or the head of the organization, nor do they feel that it's their leader and they're inclined to think the best of their leader. So it puts Ivanka in a very awkward situation when she is representing the United States. It is never a good look for somebody who is representing the United States to be booed or be laughed at in these type of situations. She likely will get a better reception in countries where people are more used to family members in charge of government operations.
That would be usually the developing world. Like we don't actually do that a lot in the developed world. We don't usually have family members involved. In fact, most developed countries don't allow it.
And that would be a challenge, exactly why someplace like Germany or even in France, where you have this history of defending liberal democracy. So perhaps someplace in the Middle East,
right,
where you have monarchies and you have these strong relationships the Trump administration needs to maintain for security purposes. They're used to having princesses and queens visit and represent and how to deal with that. Maybe Southeast Asia and the Chinese challenge. But in these really hardcore liberal democracy first, it's going to be a challenge to have Ivanka being the ambassador for the country.
All right, let me ask you this, Claire. Listen to a little bit of the conversation that our Hallie Jackson had with Ivanka Trump, addressing critics' concerns that she might be complicit in her father's controversial agenda. Listen to what Ivanka said.
Your front page news here in Berlin. One paper called you the first whisperer in a big front page headline, asking whether you will steer your father toward a more moderate course or whether you will be a loyal accomplice. How do you answer that question?
Well, I don't like the intonation of that, which, assumes that I think, I don't like the word accomplice because, in this context, I don't know that that's productive. He curates ideas and he likes to hear from people with divergent viewpoints. And that's not always true in politics. It's actually seldom true.
So, Claire, the issue there is that she's sort of avoiding an important question. In fact, when the questioner at the panel asked her about the fact that some people think her father may not have the best reputation when it comes to the furthering of women's interests, she almost went as far as to blame the media for it. She sort of implied that that's stuff that's being spread by the media. So she has to get past that in order to be influential on the global stage.
Right. That seems to be a question that she's always asked wherever she goes. Obviously she champions women's rights, women's empowerment, and is a businesswoman, or was a businesswoman herself. And she's always asked about her father's treatment of women and the comments he's made. And she always says, she returns to his record as a businessman, but people now care about his record as a president, and in his first 100 days, some of his major achievements just really haven't hit on the points that she likes to talk about in terms of childcare and paid leave. And I think until the larger public, sees some real action on that front, she's going to keep getting asked this question because, what she's talking about seems so at odds with what, the sort of the reputation that Donald Trump has with regards to women as it stands now.
So, Nayyera, I think that's an interesting point, that Claire makes, that if until you see that she's done something that is meaningful to women or she's had some influence, and when asked about that, she answered that in a previous interview, she said, hopefully no one ever sees the influence that I have, that things will just happen that'll be good for women and no one will know I've influenced it. So how do we judge this?
Again, this is a very challenging transition for her and clearly for her father as well, because there's references back to business and what's been done previously, but we're coming up on 100 days in the White House, and at some point the references are going to have to be on what has been done for the American public. It's particularly talking about childcare and women's issues, again, in a country like Germany, in Europe, that has very, very progressive child leave policies. It's understanding that the United States in many ways is far behind the developed world in how we deal with maternal health and women's issues. Paid leave. So this is going to be a quick learning curve for Ivanka Trump if she wants to be an ambassador on women's issues.
Thank you to both of you for joining me for this great conversation. Claire Zillman and Nayyera Haq. We'll see you again soon, I hope.